research has expanded hugely, particularly in the last few years with online. So you can do desk research, where essentially you use search engines to find out information about products, services, perhaps who you're targeting. You can do qualitative research online now through something called bulletin boards, where it's kind of like a chat group in a way, and that's become a common practice. In the past, there used to be door knocking. Well, that doesn't happen anymore because no one's home or they don't let in strange people, and so it's now all moved to online. And then there's qualitative research, and even within qualitative research there's a huge range of different ways to do qualitative. So qualitative's really about quality of information, so you're sort of really wanting to get into the nitty-gritty of people's lives and learn as much as you can what they do, what their behaviour is. And so you might go into a supermarket and watch what people are doing in the supermarket aisles, how long they spend comparing things, or what sections of a supermarket they might go to, how long it takes them to make a decision. And it's also in qualitative research you can go in home, talk to people in their own personal environment where they feel more comfortable, and you get a sense of their lifestyle, you get a sense of what sort of things they're into, perhaps what problems they're dealing with in their home environment and making products or services work for them. Sitting down in front of a computer and actually, doing a lot of desk research to find out what's already out there, what other people are saying about particular products or services in an area that they're looking at. Also talking to people they know, and talking as much as possible to people they don't know, talking to people who are using particular products or services that are in the market that they're looking at, finding out what the issues are people are dealing with, where the problems, and again that's to kind of spot an opportunity. Is there a possibility of kind of innovating an existing product or service so to make it work better? That can be done in all sorts of different ways, casually with groups of people, or through social media, using Facebook to ask questions of people that they know. There's just like a huge array of methods. It's essentially quantitative is really what it says. It's about quantity of information, and you're measuring the size of a market. You're also trying to pin down who might be interested in that particular product or service, and by who I mean what the demographics might be, what the age is, what the gender might be, whether they're boomers or whether they're millennials, or I think the talking to people, the qualitative part is incredibly important, because very soon you start to see what the problems might be, and also what might interest people or excite them. And while quantitative can make a big difference, particularly to bigger companies who are investing a lot in a product and service. If it's a startup situation, you really realistically don't have the money to do that. It's quite a costly process. And so my suggestion would be to talk to as many people as possible, and find out as much as you can about people. Doing a map of a competitive space is important as well. So if you're looking at a particular area, who's there already, and what are they providing, and what are the things that really work about what they're providing, and what doesn't work, and actually physically mapping them out can make a big difference to helping see where a gap or an opportunity might be. So a lot of research companies over the last few decades have developed models and methods for helping to do that. There can sometimes be a big gap between what people say and what they actually do. And so it's important to observe people and try and get into the environment in which they're interacting with a product and service, so you can see how they use it.
It's the best kind of research. If you're eyeballing, we're going all over the place, but if you're eyeballing people on the streets of Sydney for a day, that's a pretty good research study.
You need to gather up everything you can that is going to help you paint some sort of picture or give you some clue as to how that thought might be resolved, or how that idea might be turned into something that's real and tangible, that has a broad appeal to a lot of people. Because clearly, ideas are great, but they're only successful when you can transform them into something tangible that has value, and the broader the value to the more people, the better the better the upside. So I guess if you're trying to turn something that's intangible, or a thought, or something you've got in your mind, into something that has a lot more substance to it, you've got to start to look for things that are anywhere actually. But the world's a wonderful place with the internet. You can go and find out anything that's been done around pretty much anything that's been created, and start to form a point of view about what you like about what you see, how others have treated similar problems, and of course there are a number of steps you've got to go through. You've got to visualize what you've got. You've got to create some sort of tangible prototyping, production ability to bring something to the fore. You've got to figure out how you're going to do that. You've got to cost it. Somewhere in there you've got to have it. It's all part of the design process. You've got to find somebody to manufacture it for you. You've got to find a whole lot of people to believe in your thought. So you've got to be able to weave the story in a great way. So I think really that for me, that sort of whole entrepreneurialism thing is starting by almost building folders of different aspects of the palette. What does it look like? Where would it be distributed? What does it feel like? And I think I don't think this is. I think there's I think there's hard and soft information in this as well. I think you can go and look for things that are of a like-minded. If you're doing a honey extract, sure, go and look for all the honey extracts. But if you think yours has something different, go and look at all the beauty products, or go and look at all the energy drinks, or look at all the other things that might have something that own the same sort of mind space. But there is also the idea of thinking about the emotional connection that these things create as well, in terms of the senses. What drives, what will it feel like, or smell like, or taste like, for that matter, or and start to and I think really, again, I keep coming back to this. In my mind, it all works as a mosaic, and you're just collecting, bits, and you ideally stick them up on a wall, and go, I think it should look something like this, and I love the way that's priced, and I love just and what are the things that move people themselves, because I think entrepreneurial product is created from a heart and a passion that's a very personal one, which is always why it makes them the best people to work with, right? Because they do everything for themselves rather than for what they think the board or the boss wants to hear, which is where things come unstuck pretty quickly.
So where research is going now, and certainly what I'm interested in, and what I think I naturally do, is just lots of conversations all the time with different people, and just staying curious to their view on the world. The way research has been, the way I have done research has changed, because the way research is done has changed. So if I take it right back to the advertising days, when I was in advertising as a brand strategist, the classic way of doing research is focus groups. And so you might, for any project, get 4 focus groups together, because you just did, right? Even if you had a brilliant insight out of focus group 1, you'd still have to go through the other 3, 6 groups of housewives in their home, and you go and have a chat to them. Or even worse, 6 groups of housewives behind a one-way mirror as you're drinking wine, observing the housewives in the room. So that's how I started in the research. And it was fundamentally important. So, you had to listen to what the housewives said, and then adjust your brand strategy accordingly. But there's a fundamental flaw in that, because people can't really access their own reasoning, and when you do focus group research, it's a false situation. Okay, so you have intergroup dynamics, etc. So I then went on, funnily enough, to be a co-founder of a research company, the Providence Report, which looked at things a different way. And what we were about was actually expanding the worldview of leaders. We realised that actually it didn't really matter what was done down here in the marketing department. Great ideas and the environment for fantastic ideas to be realised really sits up in the executive leadership team and the board. So if they didn't really kind of get it, well, whatever you're doing down here is a waste of time. Thinking that we could in a particular subject, aligned with great one-on-one key interviews with opinion leaders, framing it up and going into boardrooms and management teams and saying this is how you want to be looking at a certain thing. Actually, these days it'll be Googling, right? Which, it has its place. I mean, you want to start, like, well, what's everybody saying about this particular subject and downloading certain things. And I guess the best Google site is Wikipedia. It's where everybody starts and assumes that, oh, that's it. Somebody has distilled the actual situation for me. But what you want to be doing in secondary research is just getting a range of resources, and that goes from, apart from academic journals, which are incredibly dry often, right? But you want to look at what's happening in, what books have been written, who are the opinion leaders, what speeches have been given. TEDx is a really good, TED Talks is a really good place to start as well. So that's secondary research, to see what is being said about a particular topic. What are the common themes coming through? And then you want to be doing your own primary research, which, as I said, used to look like focus groups, and now increasingly is, and then it kind of morphed into the second phase of my career into one-on-one interviews with opinion leaders. That's what I was doing when I was working with the Providence group. And then my third stage when I was in retail, that was, to me, what I learned there, taking all those skills with me, was actually, it's not about opinion leaders, it's about crazy idea, going into the store and talking to customers, right? Maybe you want to work the changing room for a while and have a conversation about what is it about that dress you like? And so that, to me, that's the trajectory where research has gone, because more and more it has gone from very structured processes. So we want to do the secondary research and then 6 focus groups or 4 focus groups, etc., to more one-on-one interviews. And now, in an age of design thinking, everybody's talking about design thinking, and it's about leaders getting on the street and having a conversation which doesn't have a particular agenda. The only agenda in those conversations is, I wonder I'd love to know what this person thinks. It's a really great process to get people out on the street, talking to people and bringing back ideas and getting into rapid prototyping. What I'm interested in now, because one has to keep progressing, is taking, as I said, a more anthropological viewpoint and looking a little differently. So one of my collaborators is an economic anthropologist, and we're starting to work in a different way together, where we will go and just start talking to people, right? And stay curious to what might come out of that conversation. So quite a different way. So rather than, go in with a particular framework in mind, we let that conversation take us to the next stage. So it's a way looser. That's a business in chain store retail where you are looking at trends, responding to the market, looking at trends, producing some stuff, selling it. That didn't work, right? It should have been a V-neck, whatever. It should have been cut on the knee or whatever it might be, and then taking those learnings on. You're also you're looking around at what's sold, right? What's sold or what's selling or what stores are doing overseas, but you're not necessarily looking at where people are going. You may be missing a massive opportunity to really connect more deeply with a customer if you're more curious about people rather than just the clothes that they wear. People are saying if we do the research, then basically we will know the answer, but you don't. So if you were even going to bother and I think that the most important skill or to develop or quality to have is curiosity. If you're not fundamentally curious about the world, I don't know if you can actually innovate, to be honest. I don't know if you can, there'll be places for you in the innovation food chain, but actually being the creative, to have the creative spark that sees an opportunity, I doubt whether you'll be able to do that if you don't have an essential curiosity. A classic case of an example of the failure of that model, and also how anything that's lumped qualitative research has changed, is what's happened in the recent US elections, right? If the quantitative model, if we just believed the quantitative model, Hillary Clinton should be president-elect. And and that has come as that Donald Trump as president-elect has come from a surprise. What's interesting now is how journalists and certain other people are saying, I've been out in the market, Michael Moore I've been out for 2 years talking to Trump supporters, and that's taking a more anthropological approach to research, just crazy idea, talking to people, getting a sense of, hey, something doesn't seem right here.
Some of the reading, I would look at if I was anyone today, if I'm brutally honest, is I'd certainly read the stuff coming out of the Singularity University. You can just get on their weekly emails. Very thought-provoking, gets you thinking about the world we live in, and it's all around exponential. In terms of books, the Exponential Organization is a great book to read. Much more around explaining what's going on out there and the implications, particularly for organisations, but also for people. Startup Nation is a good skim read. Just gives you the Israel story and what's occurred up there. And I think Lean Startup by Eric Ries is a pretty good book as well. So in terms of, I guess, trying to find success or avoid failure, and particularly in Spark over the years, if you rolled back 15 years ago, Spark would have thought of itself as a calling business, and almost missed the internet in a way, but we drove internet hard because a number of us had a fundamental belief that the world was about broadband, and even then we didn't know mobile was coming, and now it's about mobile broadband. So I think the trick is to always keep an eye on the trends, whether they're disruptive consumer behaviours or disruptive technologies, call them exponential if you want, is to look at both the market and look at the market back, and then look at the technology and look at the technology forward, because the magic sort of happens in the middle. And as we were talking about earlier, no one out there said we needed to have a device that carried 10,000 songs, and Steve Jobs came up with the iPod. So he didn't really find a need, he created one. So it's not to say that sometimes you can create a solution and make the problem, but I think the trick is to avoid failures is to just keep challenging your thinking about your market, your customer, your business model, because the world's moving so fast now. Even using technology systems we used 5 years ago, they're redundant now, they're costly, they're not agile. You can do this all in the cloud. So I think the biggest trick is to constantly look from the market back at your business, if you've got one, or if you want to attack another one, think about how you can attack it, and think about the business model and the cost structure. And one of the little exercises we do here at Spark is we think, what would Uber do if they had our mobile network? Because you can guarantee they would price differently, they'd construct the product differently, they probably wouldn't do handsets, they wouldn't do above-the-line marketing, they'd use social channels and activation, they wouldn't build distribution footprint the way we build distribution footprint, they wouldn't build big IT systems the way we build them. So, and it's not to say you shouldn't do some of those things, but you need to think how an attacker will think. Look at the gap between their model and your model and work out where you could emulate their model quicker to future-proof yourself, not only for your shareholders, but for your customers, for your staff, etc. So I personally find it's always good to try and think like an attacker, because the corporates are still in the best space. We still have the assets, the balance sheet, and the customers. We just have to sometimes flip the model.